Contender Sports Central being over our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over one of the top teams in the Big 12 from the 2020 season, and that's going to be the Iowa State Cyclones. This team was 9-3 overall in the 2020 season. Not a terrible season at all for Iowa State. This team was the second best team in the conference, just behind Oklahoma. And this is definitely a team that I think has got a tremendous amount of potential going to the 2021 season. And why that is what we're going over here today. We're going to go ahead and get started with your season trends from 2020. Once again, this team was 9-3 overall, 4-2 in their first 6 games, and then 5-1 in their last 6 games. So obviously this team did take 3 losses over the course of the season, but still, I mean, this team was outstanding in several games last season. They beat Oklahoma 37-30, which obviously Oklahoma wasn't as good at the start of last season, but that is still an outstanding win there against a very talented Oklahoma team. They beat Texas 23-20, beat TCU 37-34. Also knocked off West Virginia 42-6. That was a huge blowout win there. And they also beat Oregon significantly in their bowl game. 34-17 was the final score there. So obviously Iowa State last season really played well over the course of the season. They were very consistent, got several really good wins, and this is a team that has got a huge amount of potential going into next season. And just, it's pretty crazy to think about how Iowa State, this team just only a few years ago, was one of, if not the worst team in the Big 12, and this team is right back to being a contender in just a couple of years. And this team, I really do think, could be a national contender next season. Like, I mean, they were 9-3 last year, but just looking at your returning production, I mean, this team is looking outstanding going into next season, and this team I really could see going very far in the 2021 season. I mean, you got Brock Purdy coming back. He was your starting quarterback, definitely a very talented quarterback. Put up 2,700 yards, 19 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and a 67% completion rate in the 2020 season. So he had outstanding stats, definitely one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. And I think he'll be the first or second best quarterback in the Big 12 next season, depending on where Spencer Rattler lands. But I could easily see Brock Purdy being one of the better quarterbacks in the nation next year. You also got Breece Hall coming back. He had a huge impact on this team last season, 1,700 yards and 23 touchdowns for the Cyclones. So with him coming back, that's going to be a huge return because Breece Hall is definitely going to be one of the best running backs in the nation next year. Extremely underrated too. Like, you don't hear him being talked about much, but he's an outstanding running back. You also got Xavier Hutchinson coming back, Charlie Kolar, Landon Akers is also, well, actually, he was your second wide receiver. He won't be coming back, but at least you do have your 2 tight ends with Charlie Kolar and Chase Allen, and then Xavier Hutchinson is also coming back, who's your top wide receiver. So receiving core all around just looks outstanding. You got Hutchinson, who put up 700 yards, Kolar put up 590 yards. He's going to be an outstanding tight end this season, one of the best in the nation. And then, of course, you got Landon Akers. He did put up 260 yards last season. He won't be back, though. Then Chase Allen, of course, another tight end who put up 230 yards. So you've got a very talented tight end core in Iowa State going into next season with Kolar and then Allen as well. But overall, yeah, this team in the skill players positions, I mean, Iowa State is just stacked on this offensive part as far as skill positions go. They do lose 1 defensive lineman, 1 on the secondary. So, I mean, this defense loses hardly anything. And it's pretty shocking seeing a team that performed as well as they did last season with as young of a team as they were as well. I mean, this team is returning just about everyone and every major impact player from last season into 2021. So, this team, if they can stay healthy, this team is for real going into next season. I mean, especially if that offensive line can improve. That would be huge for this team, and I could see Iowa State definitely going very far next season. Chances of a Big 12 championship next season, I'd say, are very likely. I'm pretty sure it's going to be Iowa State and Oklahoma. Honestly, I think Iowa State and Oklahoma are going to be the top 2 teams of the conference by far next season. Oklahoma is really the only team that's in your way next year. I think every other team, I mean, you got a couple other good teams, like Texas could be good. TCU could be good. I mean, you could look at a couple other teams like Oklahoma State as well, but Iowa State and Oklahoma especially are just 2 outstanding teams for next season that I could see them getting upwards of 11, 12 wins next year. So, but are the Cyclones a college football playoff dark horse? That's another huge question because, I mean, when you got as talented of a team as this team has going into next season, I mean, that's got to be the conversation here. And I think this team, I mean, if you can beat Oklahoma, if you can knock them off and win the Big 12, this team should be in the college football playoff next season. So, I mean, Oklahoma, that's a big task in front of you, but I think this team is talented enough to definitely beat just about every one of their opponents except for Oklahoma. If you can beat the Sooners, that about sets you up to definitely make a run for the college football playoff. But once again, I mean, Iowa State, this is a team that I definitely think is capable of making a pretty deep run for the college football playoff this season. Looking at your schedule, you got Northern Iowa to start off your season, then you got Iowa on the 11th, so you got 2 Iowa schools there. Iowa, of course, is a rivalry matchup, and that's going to be a very intriguing matchup there in week 2 because, I mean, of course, Iowa's had a decent amount of success against Iowa State in the past, and, I mean, even though Iowa State has also won a few games, like, that's still going to be a pretty close matchup there, I can guarantee you. UNLV, you got them on the road, you got Baylor on the road, and Kansas as well. So, really, in your first 5 games, I mean, you should at least have 4 to 5 wins. I'd say 5 wins should be almost a requirement for Iowa State if you want to have any shot at getting to the college football playoff. So those first 5 are very important. You got Kansas State, then after that on the road, that could be somewhat of a tougher matchup. Oklahoma State, then you got them at home. You got West Virginia on the road, and then Texas. So that stretch between October 16th and November 6th will be a bit tougher there. You got 2 road trips, and then you got all 4 teams, which will be pretty good teams next year. Then you got Texas Tech on the road. Interesting matchup there. Then you got Oklahoma, your very important matchup there. That's going to be by far the most crucial matchup of your season. Then you got TCU to finish out the season on November 27th. So looking at your first 4 games, I'd say all 4 are wins. I'm going to give you the win against Iowa. I think that's going to be a closer game just because it's a rivalry matchup. And, I mean, most of the time we see a lot of close games between both of those teams. But I do see Iowa State getting the win there. I think Iowa State is just the more talented team between those two this season. Northern Iowa, easy win. UNLV, easy win. Same thing with Baylor. You should have 3 pretty easy wins there. As for the next for your October, Kansas is an easy win. I think Kansas State may be a closer matchup just because, I mean, for one, it's on the road, and for 2, I can actually see the Wildcats being pretty good next year. Oklahoma State, that's also going to be a close one. And then West Virginia as well. Jared Doge and all, I think they're going to be pretty good next year as well. So, yeah, you got 3 tougher matchups there, but I think they're all going to be wins. So you start the season 8-0 going into your November. That's a pretty good setup going into your November, but still, you got a pretty tough month coming up ahead for your last month of the regular season. And that being said, let's look at your last 4. Texas will be a closer matchup. I'm going to give you a win there. I think with that being at home, that gives Iowa State the advantage. Texas Tech will be an easier win. I could honestly see Texas Tech maybe putting up a fight there, but I think Iowa State gets the win by more than 14 in the end. Oklahoma, trust me when I say I went back and forth on that game so many times, and like I still don't know who I think is going to win that matchup just because, I mean, so many factors going into that matchup, and especially with it being at the end of the season, that makes it all that much harder to predict who's going to win that matchup. And I think, I mean, if Oklahoma's really injured, I could see Iowa State getting the win there. I think Iowa State's definitely capable of beating Oklahoma, but the tough thing is that you have to play them on the road in Norman. And I can tell you for a fact that Norman is a very difficult place to play, especially if that game's in prime time too. I could see that game being a night game with it being on the road in Oklahoma and also a Big 12 matchup. That can make it all that much more difficult for Iowa State to be able to win that game. So Oklahoma, I'm going to give them the edge right now. I think the Sooners do get the win there just because, I mean, Spencer Rattler and that team is looking outstanding next season. I've actually got them going 12-0 right now in my prediction for Oklahoma, if you saw that video already. But, I mean, Oklahoma is just going to be an outstanding team next season. They've got so much potential on both sides of the ball. It's just very unfortunate for Iowa State that this team, I mean, Oklahoma, it's good to have a great team in your conference, but, I mean, Iowa State especially has got a very talented team, and it's just crazy that this team has to go up against another national contender like Oklahoma there. But then you got TCU. That should be an easy win there. With it being at home, I don't really expect it to be much of a difficult matchup. But record prediction for next season is going to be 11-1 for Iowa State. I expect this team to make it pretty far next season. I really like this team. Brock Purdy and Matt Campbell. I mean, Matt Campbell's just an outstanding coach. He's done such a great job with this team. It's pretty evident by just how much this team has improved over the past few years. Like, I mean, Iowa State fans, I can guarantee you guys remember even just a few years ago when this team was at the bottom of the Big 12, and they've risen massively. It's pretty incredible over the past few years. So it should be a fun season, though. 2021 is definitely going to be one of the better seasons that we have seen pretty much ever out of Iowa State. So that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this team. Let me know your record predictions and all of that down in the comments. I do appreciate you guys all watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you guys all later.